Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on the royal family. We provide you with the exciting news Prince Harry rushes to UK after Palace announces move to strip royal titles. According to an insider say, a series of relatively subdued but significant events has rekindled an intense public and media discourse over the role and standing of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex within the British monarchy. An ostensibly small administrative modification on the official royal family website has been seen as a significant gesture analyzed from many political, constitutional, and personal perspectives. The subsequent dialogue has included constitutional precedents and legislative protocols, the realities of a streamlined monarchy under King Charles III, and the contentious distinction between the symbolic significance of royal titles and the entrepreneurial endeavors of former senior royals. Collectively, these factors have generated a multifaceted narrative on the developing relationship between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle and the institution from which they officially withdrew as senior working members in 2020. The impetus for the latest round of examination was little in appearance, but significant in consequence a modification to the royal family's official website. Observant royal enthusiasts and reporters saw that certain descriptive language on Prince Harry's profile had been modified to exclude the designation His Royal Highness HRH. The public record indicated that the Duke and Duchess had consented to refrain from utilizing their HRH titles after stepping back from their roles as senior working royals. However, the official removal of this reference from the monarchy's primary public platform was perceived as a significant gesture. For some observers, the alteration indicated an institutional resolution to formally codify, at least physically, the position that had previously been governed, mostly via consensus and convention, rather than through official legal modification. To understand why the elimination of three letters garnered significant attention, it is essential to elucidate the relevant words and methods involved. The designation His Royal Highness HRH is a formal address denoting an individual's status as a senior royal family member. The use of this authority is dictated by the sovereign's prerogatives and often expressed via instruments like letters patent, formal legal papers that may bestow, regulate, or limit titles, styles, and honors among the peerage and members of the royal household. The difference between the HRH style and a peerage like a dukedom is significant. Letters patent can regulate royal styles and specify who may use certain honorifics, modifying or rescinding an actual peerage. A dukedom granted by a predecessor usually necessitates a much more intricate legal and parliamentary procedure. The legal split is crucial to the discourse, whereas the use of HRH may often be governed at the monarch's discretion. The revocation of an existing dukedom presents distinct issues regarding property inheritance and the boundaries of royal unilateral action in contrast to legislative jurisdiction. The technological distinction is fundamental to understanding why the website edit was seen as more than just clerical maintenance. In the hierarchical constitutional framework of the United Kingdom, several statutes influencing the position and privileges of the monarchy possess both legal and symbolic significance. Styles and titles serve not just as honorifics, but also as indicators of ceremonial precedence, diplomatic settings, and the distribution of patronages and posts. The existence or lack of an HRH style in an official biography conveys information on an individual's position concerning the responsibilities and duties of the crown. Precedence has practical implications. It influences seating arrangements at state events, the sequence of royal introductions at ceremonial occasions, and the treatment of individuals bearing the monarchy's title in foreign courts. Buckingham Palace aimed to present the website modification as a standard adjustment rather than a significant declaration. An official spokeswoman said that the royal family's website has a substantial repository of factual information that need regular updating to maintain accuracy and rectify discrepancies. The palace said that the reference to the HRH title had been subsequently deleted to align with the agreement established at the Sandringham Summit in 2020, when senior family members deliberated on the execution of the Sussex's departure from full-time royal responsibilities. The official statement emphasized technical precision while seeking to mitigate the perception of a deliberate public reprimand. However, the context of the alteration included much more than a simple grammatical refinement. Simultaneously with the removal of the HRH designation, both the Duke and Duchess of Sussex had their biographies reclassified on the Members of the Royal Family site. Their entries, formerly rather prominent, were relegated to the bottom of the roster, positioned behind select working family members like the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, the Duke of Kent, and Princess Alexandra. These individuals, all of whom continue to perform official public responsibilities on behalf of the sovereign, maintained a superior position in the hierarchy. The Sussexes currently rank slightly above Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, who, after losing his military affiliations and royal patronages in 2022, no longer undertakes public activities. This recalibration of on-screen arrangement, however modest, was widely seen as a deliberate visual reaffirmation of the divide between working and non-working royals. The palace provided no official rationale for the choice to relocate the Sussex profiles, however royal critics saw it as symbolic. In an organization that emphasizes symbolism, ritual, and tradition, even a digital reorder may have significant meaning. It can establish precedent, indicate acceptance or disapproval, and reconcile the monarchy's public image with its internal governing philosophy. The phrase digital demotion often appeared in media narratives to convey that this alteration beyond mere bureaucratic adjustments. It was a calculated, tacit declaration of one's relative status within the family. The digital restructuring thus prompted a wider discussion over the nature, permanence, and appropriateness of the Sussexes' royal titles and styles. The website modifications did not transpire in isolation. They are generally recognized within royal circles and by knowledgeable critics as aligning with King Charles III's long-term ambition for a streamlined monarchy, a more compact, concentrated senior royal cohort that performs official tasks on behalf of the crown. The notion that the monarchy should reduce the number of royals receiving public funding and actively promoting the institution has been purportedly championed by the king for many years before his accession. The reasoning is both pragmatic and symbolic. A streamlined monarchy alleviates the financial strain on British taxpayers by decreasing the number of royals financed by the sovereign grant, which covers expenditures related to official responsibilities, personnel, travel, and property maintenance. A reduced number of working royals may provide a more unified public image and alleviate criticisms about the royal institution's excessive size, lack of transparency in expenses, and current relevance. King Charles's strategy has been manifestly implemented, shown by the withdrawal from public responsibilities of his younger brother, Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. In response to significant scrutiny and scandal around his connection to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew essentially withdrew from public life in 2019. In January 2022, the reigning king sanctioned the revocation of many honorary military titles and royal patronages, therefore prohibiting the use of the term His Royal Highness in any official context. These steps established a pragmatic precedent for the institution's treatment of senior royals, whose personal behavior is deemed to have significantly harmed the monarchy's prestige. The Andrew case created a significant precedent. The crown using its prerogatives might diminish the formal aspects of office and public representation to safeguard the institution. However, the Andrew example also underscores the limitations and intricacies of institutional solutions. Despite the removal of specific formal roles and patronages, Prince Andrew maintained his dukedom and other hereditary titles. The actions implemented were meticulously designed to penalize and distance without establishing a broad constitutional precedent that would transform the peerage system entirely. This caution underscores the delicacy of actions that may be seen as capricious or retaliatory. Modifying peerages and hereditary titles can raise issues of inheritance, legal rights, and the historical equilibrium between the crown's powers and parliamentary jurisdiction. The institution has shown a readiness to respond to significant reputational damage. However, it has shown a hesitance to undertake actions that may provoke legal disputes or political contention beyond what is essential. Royal biographers and scholars have seen King Charles's views as a strategic need to maintain the monarchy's enduring relevance and stability in the 21st century. Their studies indicate that the king perceives merit in establishing clear and consistent differences between those who actively represent the crown and those who do not. This clarity fulfills many purposes. It facilitates the open allocation of public resources, safeguards the important figures representing the monarchy from reputational harm, and establishes a framework for succession planning and public communication. In this light, the situation of the Sussexes, who have opted to pursue independent lives and professions, mostly in the United States, presents a specific difficulty. Their persistent retention of ducal titles, they remain the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, although residing outside the official sphere of senior working royals has emerged as a central issue in discussions over equality, consistency, and the developing character of the contemporary royal family. The issue extends beyond Harry and Meghan. It symbolizes a wider institutional need to establish a coherent policy for non-working family members. The palace is reportedly examining the management of titles and styles to prevent ad hoc arrangements and potential uncertainties as the family evolves across generations and foreign boundaries. The review addresses an institutional intent to create publicly and administratively acceptable standards and precedents, so minimizing the chances of last-minute conflicts or impressions of favoritism. As media attention escalated, the discourse inevitably transitioned from internal royal etiquette to issues that interact with constitutional law and legislative procedure. Numerous prominent British news organizations indicated that deliberations were occurring inside the palace over the legal and constitutional frameworks potentially applicable for regulating royal titles. The claims dependent on unnamed palace sources, typical in royal journalism, said that King Charles had sought counsel perhaps from top courtiers, legal advisors, and possibly members of the Privy Council. The participation of such entities demonstrates that the problem was seen as more than a private family affair. It was in some circles considered to have official, state-level ramifications. The Privy Council is a historic advisory group to the sovereign, consisting of top politicians, judges, and other eminent public personalities. Despite its mostly ceremonial responsibilities in modern times, the Privy Council continues to serve as a mechanism for executing certain official governmental operations. The proposal for the King to confer with the Privy Council indicated that the issue may be addressed via constitutional means rather than limited to private familial discussions. Engagement with ministers or other high-ranking state advisors would likewise indicate that the issue is regarded as one with public ramifications. Even procedural actions that may seem bureaucratic, such as informal legal counsel, the formulation of prospective letters patent and internal policy assessments hold significance as they embody the intentional utilization of state institutions in matters of dynastic concern. The constitutional aspect also coincided with an existing legislative proposal. In 2022, a backbench member of Parliament proposed the Titles Deprivation 1917 Act Amendment Bill. The original Titles Deprivation Act of 1917 was enacted during the First World War, permitting the parliamentary revocation of British peerages and titles from individuals who had engaged in hostilities against the United Kingdom or acted detrimentally towards it during that period. Historically, it was used to resolve the uncomfortable situation of certain nobles and princes having allegiances to rival nations. The proposed amendment aimed to update or expand the statutory framework by providing Parliament with a means to deliberate and vote on a resolution that might revoke certain royal or peerage titles under extraordinary circumstances. Upon its submission, the amendment was mostly symbolic and did not advance through the parliamentary schedule. In light of the increased attention from the palace on the Sussexes' circumstances, observers and political people reconsidered the suggestion as a viable legislative option should the Crown and government deem more official, conclusive action essential. The legislative approach seems more complex due to legal considerations abolishing a hereditary or life peerage, especially one conferred by a prior monarch, invokes issues about property rights, the perpetuity of honors, and the extent of a sovereign's authority to amend a legally issued document. Historically, Parliament has served as the mechanism via which significant alterations to honors and titles are implemented, since legislative acts provide a publicly accountable and enduring legal foundation that is less susceptible to subsequent contestation. Proponents of the parliamentary approach contended that the Sussexes' public denunciation of the monarchy, particularly their highly publicized interview and ensuing statements and Prince Harry's memoir, were incongruous with maintaining the complete array of privileges customarily afforded to royal family members. They contend that if people refuse to fulfill the public responsibilities linked to royal status and openly criticize the institution that bestows such status, it is justifiable for the state to evaluate whether these persons should retain the accompanying honors and privileges. Conversely, critics of the legislative strategy underscored the possible political and diplomatic ramifications of adopting this path along with the precedent it would establish for parliamentary engagement in familial structures and titles. They cautioned that linking peerages to private conduct or public allegiance in such a conspicuous manner might politicize the crown and undermine the distinction between state discretion and individual liberties. The administration has shown little willingness to advance such a bill significantly. Ministers have been cautious not to indicate a commitment to use the full extent of legislative authority to modify dynastic arrangements. Nevertheless, the bill's appearance indicated that the issue had beyond simple speculation. It had been officially presented as a potential constitutional alternative. This certainly enhanced the inclination of palace officials to manage matters internally, so avoiding a politicized and probably contentious legislative dispute. It highlighted the intricate interactions between Britain's legal framework, comprising royal prerogatives, letters patent, and parliamentary sovereignty and personal status and public image. A recurring and divisive subject permeating these formal and legal inquiries was commercialization. Following their withdrawal from frontline responsibilities, Prince Harry and Meghan have engaged in several private sector, media, and commercial enterprises. Prominent deals with streaming and audio firms, the formation of philanthropic and production organizations, together with many public appearances and speaking engagements, have been seen by some as prudent private ventures and by others as the commercialization of royal experience. These initiatives have been characterized both as acceptable private pursuits by persons aiming to achieve financial independence after terminating institutional funding, and as exploitative commercialization of a public position that should not be used for personal branding. Critics assert that these media endeavors exploit the couple's royal affiliation, resulting in a clash between private profit interests and the public service principles historically linked to the monarchy. The Sussexes' use of personal narratives of their royal experience, whether in movies, radio programs, or print blurs, the distinction between private industry and the public symbols of royalty, thereby undermining the non-commercial civic dignity associated with royal rank. Advocates for the Sussexes contend that individuals possess a legitimate right to pursue a livelihood upon relinquishing their status as senior working royals, asserting that the couple's creative endeavors constitute a valid avenue for self-sufficiency. They maintain that the couple's identities, experiences, and narratives belong to them, and argue that demanding the erasure of that history for the sake of public interest is unjust. The discourse on commercialization connects with issues of trademark branding and global trade. The value of every media endeavor is contingent upon a confluence of elements, including personal narratives, celebrity influence, accessibility, and the public's need for insider insights into globally recognized organizations. The degree to which a royal affiliation may or should be used for profit involves ethical considerations as well as intellectual property rights and the standards that regulate how entities and people monetize prestige. The discussion thus poses the inquiry of whether explicit restrictions on commercial endeavors should be imposed on those associated with symbolic public posts, and if so, how such restrictions may be delineated and implemented without encroaching onto private life. The discourse over commercialization was intensified by media coverage, citing a royal advisor purportedly connected to the Prince of Wales. Reports indicate that the heir to the throne believes royal titles should not serve as branding tools for personal profit. This statement, relayed through an anonymous source rather than directly by the prince, has been broadly interpreted as a direct critique of his younger brother and sister-in-law's commercial endeavors. The study reinforced the notion of an intra-family conflict about principles and practices. The heir, as indicated in the articles, seemed to adopt a more stringent stance on the proper applications of royal rank. The existence of even an indirect articulation of such a perspective among older family members added an emotionally charged layer to the otherwise routine discussion. The issue of titles was not only legal or bureaucratic, it was ethical and symbolic, intrinsically linked to the essence of royal service in contemporary Britain. Some critics said that the purported perspective articulated by the Prince of Wales strengthened the rationale for formal measures against the Sussexes. Conversely, advocates of the couple saw it as a confrontation between divergent generational and ideological approaches to public life and media interaction. As the media narrative escalated, officials for the Duchess of Sussex allegedly informed U.S. entertainment publications, asserting that the discussions over names and styles were a private family matter and should not be treated as a public spectacle. This framing was in part an effort to depersonalize the conflict, depicting it as a familial issue best settled privately, rather than a subject for news conferences and legislative motions. The technique aimed to redirect the discourse from public spectacle to private discussion. Notwithstanding that endeavor, the narrative proved exceptionally challenging to control. Royal titles are intrinsically public due to their constitutional and ceremonial significance in the worldwide intrigue surrounding the British monarchy, guarantees that any perceived discord would get extensive notice. Consequently, even meticulously controlled efforts to restrict exposure encountered enduring curiosity and conjecture. The media landscape in which the problem unfolded was a crucial element influencing the magnitude and nature of the dispute. An alternative, more spectacular story emerged online, propelled by social media celebrity gossip platforms and the endeavors of internet monitoring hobbyists. This sensational aspect of reporting focused on unsubstantiated assertions that Prince Harry had undertaken an abrupt solitary journey to the United Kingdom to confront the issue with his family directly. The source of these rumors was publicly accessible flight tracking data indicating a private jet's journey from California to London. Numerous social media accounts and gossip websites immediately associated this aircraft with the prince fabricating a tale of an urgent crisis rush home. Following the conception of a solo excursion, other conjectural elements emerged: assertions that the prince had journeyed without his spouse, that he exhibited noticeable tension, and that the visit was an unforeseen emergency. Both fans and critics capitalized on the narrative, while hashtags and trending topics heightened the feeling of urgency. Some critics saw Harry as an aggrieved son, striving to uphold family honor, while others perceived his alleged voyage as a desperate effort at reputation management. Paparazzi and tabloid photographers allegedly awaited confirmation at airports. However, no definitive photographic proof surfaced to validate the assertion. Neither the Sussex camp nor Buckingham Palace provided a confirming statement on the trip. This instance underscores a contemporary media phenomenon. A little provable fact, such as an aircraft's flight trajectory, can be rapidly compiled, analyzed, and magnified into a complex story by social media algorithms, celebrity commentators, and partisan viewers. The crisis narrative illustrates how baseless assumptions may proliferate and influence public perception without official validation. The rumor, albeit without independent proof, substantially influenced public conversation by amplifying a feeling of urgency and drama around what might have been seen as a standard institutional update. This exemplifies a wider tendency in modern public life, when incomplete knowledge is rapidly converted into narrative certainty via current communication methods. In the midst of rampant conjecture, Buckingham Palace adopted a stance of deliberate caution in its communications. The institutional approach adhered to a long-standing strategy, calculated, restrained, and centered on procedure rather than individual character. The palace deliberately refrained from addressing spectacular accusations, opting instead to provide accurate technical remarks where necessary, such as regarding the website update, while declining to comment on rumors about private discussions or personal trips. The palace's strategy is to uphold the crown's dignity by eschewing dramatization and handling familial issues with moderation. Historically, the maxim, "never complain, never explain," has embodied this strategy. By standing aloof, the monarchy seeks to preserve an impression of neutrality and continuity. The deliberate silence, however, engenders an interpretative void, often filled by anonymous sources, commentary, and conjectural reporting. When the institution opts not to provide narrative details, others will fill the void, resulting in a discordant array of conflicting assertions. Senior royal journalists with strong palace connections characterize the environment as one of strained, systematic contemplation. The discussions are characterized as businesslike, akin to a succession of strategy briefings or board meetings rather than the emotionally heated family interventions depicted by the tabloids. The primary focus, as shown by these stories, is the enduring health and stability of the monarchy. Discussions are motivated more by institutional risk evaluation than by personal grievances, and by the need to harmonize tradition with modern expectations. Several feasible outcomes are anticipated moving forward. The most immediate and probable outcome, particularly in the near term, is that no more formal measures will be implemented beyond the website modification. In that context, the edit would serve as the definitive declaration of the Sussexes' present status. They would retain the titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex, although their actual role within the family would be visibly and administratively delineated as non-working. The palace might justifiably determine that the amalgamation of the public arrangement established in 2020, the revised internet presentation, and the couple's expatriate existence generates enough distance rendering further public measures superfluous or detrimental. Preserving that balance would enable the institution to avoid a spiraling cycle of public condemnation that might detract from essential constitutional obligations and the execution of official tasks. A second, more official alternative would need the king issuing fresh letters patent to clarify the use of the HRH style for his son. This method would be quite uncomplicated within the current constitutional framework. Letters patent are devices that the sovereign may use to designate individuals who possess certain titles and honors. The issuance of new letters patent would serve as a legal formalization, clarifying the exact use of the HRH style in the future. This action would reinforce an established practical arrangement and may be characterized as judicious management, aimed at enhancing institutional clarity. This would provide an administratively efficient method to delineate a clear distinction, indicating to the public and foreign courts and institutions how the Crown wants to regard the Sussexes' position in official situations. The most legally and politically significant option would be to initiate a legislative procedure to abolish the dukedom. The course would be constitutionally important and controversial. A parliamentary act or resolution intended to revoke the dukedom of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex would likely provoke intense discourse regarding the boundaries of parliamentary authority concerning matters of honor, the interplay between state power and the royal family, and the political sagacity of intervening in what some may characterize as a private familial issue. This action may elicit worldwide resentment, especially in the United States, where the Sussexes have a significant public presence and might be seen as retributive. Consequently, and given the government's current lack of inclination for such involvement, this course of action seems improbable unless there is a significant change in political will or public opinion. Each of these scenarios has distinct implications for the monarchy's power and legitimacy. An administrative clarification would maintain the current state while providing a clear public rationale. Issuing letters patent would utilize constitutional mechanisms to establish clarity, but may be deemed bureaucratic overreach. And a parliamentary intervention would transition the issue from royal prerogative to explicit political debate. Decision-makers inside the palace must consider not only the legal viability of each option, but also the public perception, the possibility of legal challenges, and the anticipated domestic and international public response, particularly in areas where the Sussexes have considerable prominence. Fundamental to these procedural options are profound questions about the identity and societal function of the contemporary monarchy. The dispute regarding the Sussexes' titles exemplifies the larger conflicts facing King Charles III's reign. The reconciliation of tradition with modern standards, the balancing of private lives with public obligations, and the navigation of institutional symbolism in the age of immediate global media. The discourse addresses essential matters: who ought to represent the crown, how the institution distributes its limited resources, and what limits should be established between acquired royal privilege and private activity. The responses to these inquiries will influence the monarchy's legitimacy within an evolving social and media context. The nuanced website modification has consequently exposed deeper fractures, disparities in principles and practices, variations in generational viewpoints, and divergent interpretations of acceptable conduct for royal family members. It pertains not only to styles or titles, but to power, identity, and the image the monarchy aims to convey in an age when even trivial institutional actions may be amplified by worldwide scrutiny. The settlement of the Sussexes' position, whether judicial, administrative, or rhetorical, will provide insight into the future trajectory of the monarchy. The decisions taken by King Charles and his advisors amidst ongoing public debate will provide significant insights into the monarchy's future. If the organization prioritizes legal clarity via letters patent and internal policy, it will indicate a managerial institutional strategy for modernization. Should it choose symbolic measures such as meticulous curation of public presentation, it will underscore the efficacy of ceremonial arrangement in delineating institutional boundaries. Should Parliament got actively involved, which seems improbable in the near future, it would signify a significant constitutional intervention in the domain of dynastic honor. Each option has distinct ramifications for royal power, public opinion, and the privacy of family members. The human aspect of the narrative must not be disregarded. This controversy transcends legal intricacies and institutional strategy, impacting the lived experiences of individuals, the pressures of public life, the choices made to safeguard personal well-being and family, and the repercussions of those choices on relationships with relatives and the institution of their birth. For Prince Harry, the inquiry of whether he will ultimately be recognized mostly by his surname rather than by a formal dukedom embodies the conflict between individual liberty and hereditary privilege. The resolution will demonstrate the monarchy's adaptation to contemporary standards and the individual decisions of individuals crossing the increasingly indistinct boundary between private life and public duty in an era of immediate scrutiny. The chosen route highlights the intricate interaction of law, ritual, public sentiment, and personal life that envelops the British monarchy. A three-letter modification on a website has effectively illuminated persistent inquiries about how a centuries-old organization readjusts itself when the lives of its members are experienced and commercialized on a worldwide platform. The management of this specific instance will establish a precedent, either official or informal, for the royal family's approach to future conflicts between individual autonomy and public expectation. The palace's prudent and methodical approach indicates a desire to address the matter within institutional boundaries, balancing the maintenance of dignity and continuity with the unavoidable scrutiny of public life. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.